group of devotees, and it's always enlivening, to just be in Sangha like this. So we will be reading today. I'll go ahead and share the screen. Okay. So we'll be reading today. This is 10th canto. We've arrived at the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1. And our verses of focus today are texts 52 and 53. But before we read these verses, thought it might just be helpful to summarize a little bit, to go back a bit in the text and just kind of arrive at where we are now. So let's take a look at this. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll just pick up here at text number 46, just to enter into this point in the pastime. So we'll just read the English. Shukadev Goswami continued, O best of the Kuru dynasty, Kamsa was fiercely cruel and was actually a follower of the Rakshasas. Therefore, he could be neither pacified nor terrified by the good instructions given by Vasudeva. He did not care about the results of sinful activities, either in this life or in the next. When Vasudeva saw that Kamsa was determined to kill his sister Devaki, he thought to himself very deeply. Considering the imminent danger of death, he thought of another plan to stop Kamsa. Text 48. As long as he has intelligence and bodily strength, an intelligent person must try to avoid death. This is the duty of every embodied person. But if death cannot be avoided in spite of one's endeavors, a person facing death commits no offense. Vasudeva considered, by delivering all my sons to Kamsa, who is death personified, I shall save the life of Devaki. Perhaps Kamsa will die before my sons take birth, or since he is already destined to die at the hands of my son, one of my sons may kill him. For the time being, let me promise to hand over my sons, so that Kamsa will give up this immediate threat. And if in due course of time Kamsa dies, I shall have nothing to fear. When a fire, for some unseen reason, leaps over one piece of wood and sets fire to the next, the reason is destiny. Similarly, when a living being accepts one kind of body and leaves aside another, there is no other reason than unseen destiny. Okay, we'll enter into today's verses. Evam vimrishyatam papam yavad atma nidarshanam pujayam asavai sorir bahumana purasaram. After thus, translation, Srila Prabhupada. After thus considering the matter as far as his knowledge would allow, Vasudeva submitted his proposal to the sinful Kamsa with great respect. Text number 53. Prasanavadanam bojo nirsham nirapatrapam manasaduyamanena vihasan idam abravit. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Vasudeva's mind was full of anxiety because his wife was facing danger. But in order to please the cruel, shameless, and sinful Kamsa, he externally smiled and spoke to him as follows. Purport. Sometimes one must act duplicitously in a dangerous position, as Vasudeva did to save his wife. The material world is complicated, and to execute one's duties one cannot avoid adopting such diplomacy. Vasudeva did everything possible to save his wife for the sake of begetting Krishna. This indicates that one may act duplicitously for the purpose of saving Krishna and his interests. According to the arrangement already foretold, Krishna was to appear through Vasudeva and Devaki to kill Kamsa. Vasudeva therefore had to do everything to save the situation. Although all the events were prearranged by Krishna, a devotee must try his best to serve the purpose of Krishna. Krishna himself is all-powerful, but it is not that a devotee should therefore sit idly and leave everything to him. This instruction is also found in Bhagavad Gita. Although Krishna was doing everything for Arjuna, Arjuna never sat down idly as a non-violent gentleman. Rather, he tried his best to fight the battle and be victorious. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Once again, thank you everyone for joining this morning. Feeling fortunate to be in your association, and wanted to seek everyone's blessings, in particular, that this can be a meaningful, uplifting discussion we have this morning, and is something that is faithful to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, pleasing to Srila Prabhupada, all of our predecessor acharyas, and can genuinely fortify us in our spiritual pursuits. Particularly like to seek the blessings of all of the senior Vaishnavas here, Adipurusha Prabhu, Arjuna Prabhu may be present, Bhima Prabhu, Shikshastak Prabhu, all of these devotees who have been in Krishna consciousness for so very long, Henry Prabhu, everyone who's here with us. So thank you very much. And we will proceed with this discussion. We're at a very interesting, this is more than very interesting. This is, the ultimate happening here in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna's appearance in this world, the advent of Krishna. So in this section, what we see is that Vasudeva is being very precise and diplomatic in his approach as he's facing Kamsa, who he knows factually is an evil person who has this rakshasic tendency, this demonic tendency, and cares not at all for the lives of others, cares not at all what may happen to them, what may befall them. And this is someone who is acting out of pure self-interest. And of course, in today's world, unfortunately, there are many such persons who don't care very much about others. And it may, there's sort of a gradient there. There may be people who care only about themselves. There may be people who care about their immediate family. There may be people who care about their own small community. There may be people who care about their own country, nationality, race. There may be people who care about, the human race. Then there are those who care about all living beings. It's a very, we see so many different manifestations of how care can be applied. And actually at the most gross, at the most sort of tamasic manifestation of this, there are people who don't even care about their own selves. They don't care about others, they don't care about the world, and they can't even muster that feeling of self-preservation or care. It's just a state of complete and utter bewilderment, we would say nihilism. And so Kamsa, in this case, he does care about his own life. He wants to preserve his own life, and therefore he's willing to do anything and everything to try to prevent this, what is foretold, that the son, one of the sons of Vasudeva and Devaki, will be responsible for the end of his life. So at this point, he is fiercely threatening to kill Devaki. So Vasudeva, as it says in this previous verse that we looked at, it's the duty of a responsible person, we can say. It's the duty of a responsible person to try to preserve life. So Vasudeva is taking every angle possible. And at first he's speaking some philosophy to Kamsa, not particularly theistic, because he knows also that Kamsa would not be likely to respond to such a thing. So he's speaking, philosophically to Kamsa and trying to appeal to him. But all of these methods, they don't seem to be working. So now he's contemplating within himself what might touch Kamsa, what might make Kamsa spare Devaki's life. And of course, when we're dealing with a self-interested person, there's always this question, what's in it for me? So now Vasudeva, brilliantly within himself, he's contemplating in such a philosophical way. It's also amazing that we're being told what Vasudeva's inner monologue is. And he's thinking about the fire from one piece of wood jumping to another. It's just very fascinating. And then he goes on to decide that perhaps the best way here to appeal to Kamsa is to say, well, I will present every one of our children to you. Every son that comes will be presented to you personally, and if you so desire, you can kill, like that. But of course, he's still begging him not to do so. And in his mind, he's thinking, okay, well, at least this might buy us some time, that Devaki will be spared. The immediate threat will be resolved. So his internal reasoning, better than simply surrendering Devaki to Kamsa. Perhaps between now and then, Kamsa may die. His death may come either naturally or by the hand of one of the sons, as foretold. So he's contemplating destiny in this way. And of course, it is his duty to save Devaki. And I'll share a passage here. This is coming from the purport, which we just saw a few days ago, but wanted to restate. This is coming from the purport of text number 48. Srila Prabhupada says, "It is natural for a person facing untimely death to try his best to save himself. This is one's duty. Although death is sure, everyone should try to avoid it and not meet death without opposition, because every living soul is by nature eternal." And he goes on to say, "One who is not trying to stop death is not an intelligent human being. Because Devaki was face to face with imminent death, it was Vasudeva's duty to save her, as he was trying his best to do. He therefore considered another way to approach Kamsa, so that Devaki would be saved." So here it's very clear that because the soul is nitya, is eternal, it's very natural actually that we don't want to die. And also very natural that we don't want our loved ones to die. Because if we are viewing ourselves as the body, which of course Vasudeva is not. Vasudeva has pure knowledge. But if we're viewing ourselves as the body, we will surely want the body to live forever, because somewhere within us we recognize that there's this eternal nature that we have. So what a relief when we receive knowledge from Srila Prabhupada, when we receive knowledge from the Shastra, explaining that we are souls, spirit souls of eternal nature. So our desire to preserve our life while intelligent, while we are in this embodied state, certainly we don't want to underestimate the value of the body that Krishna has given us, and to say, oh, well, aham brahmasmi, I'm a spirit soul, so whatever happens to my body. No, we have an important, function here in this material world. We have to try our best to come closer to Krishna and to serve while we're here in this material world. So our body in that respect is quite important. So it's important that we preserve our life in this world while simultaneously recognizing that this material world and this material body is not everything. So Kamsa here is considering Vasudeva's proposal, and we know that in the subsequent verses he does agree. He accepts this proposal. So Vasudeva appears to be diplomatic and calm, but he's actually full of anxiety. So we find in this verse, it's very interesting that it says he smiled externally. Externally, he was smiling while he was approaching Kamsa. So there's this question of duplicity.
Bandhu Prabhu, can you show us Vasudeva's external smile? Like this?
Like that?
I don't know.
I don't know. We don't know, but it's very nice to picture like this. Yeah, it's like was it a forced sort of smile? Was Kamsa able to see that he wasn't actually smiling, or was he very convincing in this way? But there's always diplomacy in this material world. Always.
Yeah, Bhima Prabhu is an actor. He was in the drama. Bhima Prabhu, can you show us Vasudeva's external smile? Yeah, good. We can't hear you, Bhima Prabhu.
We can't hear you, Bhima Prabhu.
Bhima Prabhu, where are you?
Your smile, very much like Dina Bandhu's smile. Very much. It was a sincere smile saying, Kamsa, what the hell are you thinking? Krishna's going to kick your ass. That's what he was saying.
Good. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can smile nervously. And then certainly I know this. Sometimes I'm a bit of a smiley person. So I remember actually one of my, someone who was training me in the chaplain, world. She one time said, we have to be careful about smiling all the time, because sometimes it can send kind of the opposite message. It's like leave me alone, something like that. So it's important that we be honest in our facial expressions. However, in this diplomatic situation, as Bhima Prabhu perfectly said, this is what was happening. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a smooth interaction at all. So sometimes we try to do things in this world to keep things a little bit smooth, which is complicated, right? It's complicated because within ourselves, we may feel that we're being very untrue. However, what we're going to discuss here is that if such diplomacy is brandished in Krishna's service, then sometimes it is necessary, and it is also ultimately transcendental. It's pleasing to Krishna. If we're really preserving Krishna's interest, which of course here, Vasudeva is quite literally preserving, the advent of Krishna. So what can be higher than this? So I just want to share a few examples here. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 13, text number 37. I'll share the screen, because Srila Prabhupada shares a number of these examples of sort of transcendental diplomacy or transcendental fraud is actually what Prabhupada says here. So just want to share this. So the verse here is coming from a different pastime, of course, but I'll just read. Sanjaya said, "My dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles and Gandhari." Then he says, "O king, I have been cheated by those great souls." So here's the purport. Offers a lot of good examples. So Prabhupada says here that great souls cheat others may be astonishing to know, but it is a fact that great souls cheat others for a great cause. It is said that Lord Krishna also advised Yudhisthira to tell a lie before Dronacharya, and it was also for a great cause. The Lord wanted it, and therefore it was a great cause. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criterion of one who is bona fide, and the highest perfection of life is to satisfy the Lord by one's occupational duty. That is the verdict of Gita and Bhagavatam. Dhritarashtra and Vidura, followed by Gandhari, did not disclose their determination to Sanjaya, although he was constantly with Dhritarashtra as his personal assistant. Sanjaya never thought that Dhritarashtra could perform any act without consulting him. But Dhritarashtra's going away from home was so confidential that it could not be disclosed even to Sanjaya. Sanatan Goswami also cheated the keeper of the prison house while going away to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And similarly, Raghunath Das Goswami also cheated his priest and left home for good to satisfy the Lord. To satisfy the Lord, anything is good, for it is in relation with the absolute truth. We also had the same opportunity to cheat the family members and leave home to engage in the service of Srimad Bhagavatam. Such cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such transcendental fraud. So this is very compelling, very interesting. I mean, I look forward to our discussion of this because, of course, these are beautiful transcendental examples, but at the same time, it's a slippery slope, right? Especially for those who are not pure devotees. And Srila Prabhupada it's amazing in that purport, he actually gives the example of his own self. He says that he, because Srila Prabhupada had his family, and at the suitable time, he did, move on from family life and enter into sannyas ashram, and he eventually came here. By Krishna's grace, he came here. So all of us as direct beneficiaries, we've all benefited from Srila Prabhupada's decision. So we can feel so directly, how could Krishna be upset with that decision? Srila Prabhupada's a pure devotee. He's acting on Krishna's will. And in this way, such transcendental, a decision like that is not at all displeasing. So many examples like this. And we have Maharaj Yudhisthira as a very famous example. So in Mahabharata, we hear about how Krishna instructs Maharaj Yudhisthira in order to save the Pandavas from Dronacharya, because Dronacharya is a very powerful warrior. And if he continues to fight, the army will be defeated. The Pandava army will be defeated. So Krishna says, and this is coming from the text of Mahabharata that Krishna Dharma Prabhu translated, it says, "Under the circumstances, falsehood is better than truth. Speaking falsehood in order to preserve life is not a sin." Krishna cited a scriptural passage that sanctioned lying under certain circumstances, including times when life was endangered. Yudhisthira reflected on Krishna's words. He could not ignore them. He had never in his life spoken even in ambiguity. The thought of a lie was difficult to face. Yet, if Drona was not checked, his forces would be defeated. So there's a particular purpose. Maharaj Yudhisthira is receiving a direct instruction from Krishna. So what happens is, the son of Dronacharya, his name was Ashvatthama. And this is, his life and soul. Dronacharya's son Ashvatthama is his life and soul. And they knew that if Ashvatthama had been killed, then Dronacharya would be completely deflated and would not be able to defeat the Pandavas. So there was also an elephant by the name of Ashvatthama. And what happened is that the Pandava army, I believe Bhima, directly killed this elephant named Ashvatthama. So then Maharaj Yudhisthira speaks and he tells Ashvatthama is dead. And it says here in this translation of Mahabharata, he says, Ashvatthama is dead. He called out, adding inaudibly at the end, the elephant, as he could not tell an utter untruth under any circumstance. So we have this experience of relative truth in this world, relative truth that is dependent upon other factors, dependent upon other truths or even opinions, right? So for me to look out the window and say, this is beautiful, what a beautiful view, that's a relative truth. That depends upon my own conditioned senses. I actually had this experience with my spiritual master. One time we were walking in the forest, and there was kind of like an overlook. It was like kind of a high point in the forest here in New Jersey. And I said, oh, that's a beautiful view. And he said, well, it's a view. So there's kind of this, it's a relative experience. And perhaps some of us have a very rosy view of something. Some of us have a more realistic, sober view of things. And then on the other side, some may have a very pessimistic, negative view of the world. So a great devotee is sober and sees things clearly while simultaneously experiencing great ecstasy from the spiritual joys, the spiritual experiences and service to Krishna, relationship with Krishna and the Vaishnavas. So there's relative truth, like what a nice view. Then there's absolute truth, right? There's absolute truth. And there's absolute truth on the material platform also. We can say it's still relative because it relates to this material world, but there are sort of undeniable truths like, the sky is blue, right? That many people will accept that as a truth. But because it's related to the material creation, it still has an aspect of relativity. And then there's absolute truth, like the real spiritual truth. So what's being talked about here in some sense is that if one is lying in direct service to Krishna, particularly one who is a pure devotee, and there's no question of self-interest at all, then this is aligned with the absolute truth. It sort of transcends, the relative question of, truth or falsehood. So Srila Prabhupada also makes a few statements about absolute truth and relative truth. I'll just read one here. It's from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, chapter 9, text number 3. So Srila Prabhupada says here, the supreme truth is uncontaminated by the illusory energy because he is the controller of that energy. The relative truths are apt to be engrossed in illusory energy. The best purpose is served, however, when one is directly facing the supreme truth, as when one faces the sun. The sun overhead in the sky is full of light, but when the sun is not in the visible sky, all is in darkness. Similarly, when one is face to face with the Supreme Lord, he is freed from all illusions. And one who is not so is in the darkness of illusory Maya. So Krishna is like the sun. Anything in relationship to Krishna, anything in service to Krishna has this aspect of truth, because Maya is a servant of Krishna. So therefore we can say that although Vasudeva, in this particular case, he's being diplomatic, he's smiling as he speaks to Kamsa, although he's full of anxiety. He's operating in the service of the Supreme. He's facilitating the pastimes of Krishna. So in this way, there's no question of, oh, well, maybe Vasudeva should have been more truthful. Maybe he should have just blurted out to Kamsa, Kamsa, I'm full of anxiety, I don't know what to do. No, in this case, he's acting in such a way as to allow for Krishna's will to be carried out. He's allowing Krishna to work through him. So this is, sorry, just to close this. So we try to do our duty. And we have to be very careful also about taking this example to heart. I'm so interested for this discussion, what the devotees will share, because when I was reading this, I was just feeling, in my own case, we're so conditioned. So if I'm lying and I think that I'm doing so in the service of Krishna, that's also a very slippery slope, because pure devotees have no self-interest at all, as illustrated here by Vasudev. He's operating purely for the sake of Krishna. And in the case of, the Pandavas, diplomacy is sometimes necessary, but it's always in the service of Krishna, which leads to genuine victory, which of course we have in Bhagavad Gita, a beautiful verse, one of the final, this is, here at the end of chapter 18, wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. So their victory is based entirely upon their devotion to Krishna. So whatever is carried out in the process has that transcendental quality. So pure devotees have no self-interest at all. But for someone like myself, conditioned, how can we do this? How can we operate in this way, in this world of diplomacy, and still try to operate in the interest of Krishna? So I'm posing that as a question so that we can all discuss this together. So Krishna is appearing through Vasudeva and Devaki. So we can't avoid our duty. We can't avoid our small part in what goes on in this world. As Prabhupada says in this purport, we can't just sit idly by and say, Krishna is Bhagavan. Krishna will take care of everything. It's actually that Krishna sometimes wants us to do our part. Just like in the pastime when Mother Yashoda binds Krishna, the Damodar Leela. We hear from the previous acharyas that the rope was always 2 fingers too short. So the acharyas explain that those 2 fingers represent, one represents endeavor, Mother Yashoda's endeavor, one represents Krishna's mercy. So everything that happens in this world is a meeting between endeavor and mercy. So Krishna likes when we are doing our part. He wants to use us in service. This is relationship. And loving exchange is really possible when we're trying to do our small part. So if Krishna wants to use us in service, we can't just simply say, okay, Krishna will take care. We miss the opportunity. Of course, Krishna can take care. Of course, Krishna possesses all opulences and is ultimately the supreme controller of everything. But how wonderful is Krishna that he wants us to serve, that he wants us to play our small role, though it's not necessary. He can do anything and everything. Krishna loves loving exchange with the devotees. So through the Paramatma and through Chaitya Guru, the guru within the heart, and ultimately through the spiritual master, who is the manifestation of the Chaitya Guru, the embodiment of the Chaitya Guru, Krishna is guiding us to act in this world. And when we're determining how this can be carried out, we also consult with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra to try to do it clearly. So this is a very interesting example here of the way that Vasudeva is acting diplomatically, but ultimately in the service of Krishna. So it's a powerful example. And as we know, this is what enables, in terms of the Leela, in terms of the pastime, this is what enables Krishna to appear in this world. So thank you all very much. And I'll stop here. Looking forward to this discussion. I see Shikshastika Prabhu has raised his hand. So thank you all. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much. That was such a good example of how to align ourselves with Krishna and his will. If we're totally renounced, then we will automatically, when our own desires are nil and Krishna's desires are foremost, and then we'll be able to smoothly go through the world, even cheating. There's another example of, Krishna is the greatest cheater. He's of gamblers, I'm the cheat. So nobody can out-cheat Krishna. But if we want to be his instrument, and I really like your example also of how Krishna likes to interplay with his devotees, ultimate, Krishna wants everybody back in the spiritual world to be absorbed in his play. So that's what he wants. And so if he wants that, how fortunate are we if he calls us, So, there's another example because, before the Battle of Kurukshetra, Bhima or Duryodhana was going to go fight with Bhima. And, he was pretty powerful club warrior. And so Krishna, he's the greatest cheater. So he was going to go see his mother. His mother, Gandhari, she had a blindfold on her whole life ever since she was married to Dhritarashtra. And so if she took off her blindfold, that would be like a protective covering over her son. So she told him to come to him completely naked. And so Krishna, he cheated him by saying, what are you doing? You don't want to go around naked, just at least wear a loincloth. And so he did that, and every part of his body was protected except his midsection there. And so therefore Bhima targeted that and killed him. So, but there's a fine line between cheating. There's the example of, Prabhupada used the example of Sanatana Goswami in the jail. I guess that's cheating. It's bribery. I don't know if it's real. I don't think the jailer felt cheated. He gave him a lot of money. But anyway, if we're not pure in our inclination, in our service, then we'll run into trouble, because it's actually, when we're doing it for self-interest, that's entangling. Bhumi, actually Mother Earth, she said, there's nothing more sinful than untruthfulness. Because of this, Mother Earth, Demigoddess Bhumi, once said, I can bear any heavy thing except a person who is a liar. And just look at the world situation right now. The propaganda that's being spewed by Russia. Okay, yeah, so Ukraine is now attacking. They say Ukraine is now attacking the Donbas region, and we're gonna, Russia's paying everyone to leave and giving them asylum in Russia, and they're just making a false flag situation. This is all diplomacy and lying in order to achieve a selfish result. And that's like the greatest sin. Mother Earth can't even stand that. That's why Krishna appeared, to annihilate these kind of kings. And I just want to close with one thing that Prabhupada said. This is Kali Yuga. Everybody's lying for their own self-interest. Nobody's lying for Krishna. I would love to lie for Krishna. That would be great. If I got that, if I knew for certain, you really do have to be careful. But Prabhupada said, he said once, in Kali Yuga, if you lie, people will like you. If you tell the truth, people will beat you with sticks. So that's the way it is. I mean, look at our leadership and all the lies that have gone on. So we have to be really careful not to fall into that trap. And Prabhupada was very he was truthful, but at the same time, he had no ego whatsoever. So he was able to, he could tell like a politician or a scientist to his face that you are a sinful rascal. You're completely wrong. And they wouldn't even take offense. They would say, oh yeah, maybe I haven't, conducted my experiment properly. They would rethink it, because they could tell that Prabhupada was not at all interest in the self. So if we can actually have that standard of Prabhupada's purity, and be a transparent medium to Krishna, then we could do anything. The ends justify the means, right? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Shikshastra Prabhu. Thank you. Yeah, great points.
Andrea?
Hare Krishna, Dina Bandhu Prabhu. Thank you again, as always, for a very sweet class. And like I always say, you could always sense your Gurudev with you. Even if you're not sharing little pastimes about him, you could sense the energy of him with you. Your class today made me think. I'm doing an ISKCON communications course with Anuttama Prabhu, and in the course he shares a pastime of Srila Prabhupada with his disciples, where he received a letter where the disciples were asking him like what they should do. That when they were doing book distribution, they were telling people that they were asking for money because it was going to be sent to feed the poor in India. And they were like, and now like people know that we're not doing that, and what should we do? And And he said to them in that letter, he was just like, if you said that you're raising this money to feed the poor in India, then that's what you should do. And he really wanted them, he wanted ISKCON and the people that represented and are part of it to be in integrity, right? And to walk our talk. And he talked about the importance of being respectable, and how people saw the devotees, that would affect how they saw Krishna. I mean, again, I'm paraphrasing, there's like a whole letter that he wrote, but that really, I don't know, it really struck me, because when you were giving this class, I was thinking, but then what about, Prabhupada's instruction to them about how it, the end doesn't justify the means, and just because you think that this money is going to be for Krishna and getting temples or getting books, that doesn't mean that you should lie to people. So I guess I'm presenting it, but also as a question in a way, like what about circumstances like that?
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Yeah, what comes to mind when you say that is also, it's a real question of our own consciousness, and how these means, to an end, are affecting us. Are they eroding our sense of integrity? Are they eroding our sense of what is true? And that has to do with our consciousness. If one is conscious of Krishna, 24/7, then they can actually engage in some of these means, perhaps, if they are sincerely considering that this is all for Krishna. But it requires a lot of honesty in terms of, how is this affecting me? And it's very, very easy for self-interest to creep in. Very easy for self-interest to creep in. And I may be trying to do something like that and saying that it's for Krishna, but at the same time, all of a sudden something might come up. Oh, I'm so great at doing this, whatever. And then all of a sudden the whole thing becomes, contaminated. So, and that goes for so many of our endeavors, our endeavors in trying to serve even within the Hare Krishna movement, right? That we have to be very much on guard for how the ego can latch onto anything. Ego can latch us. Spiritual life is a great thing for the ego to latch onto. Wow, I'm very wise. I'm very, whatever it is. So in that way, one who is truly a pure devotee is not affected. Their sense of integrity is not actually eroded, because they're not thinking of it as something they're doing. They're thinking of it all for Krishna. So that's just something that comes to mind. I would love to hear from others.
Adipusha Prabhu, you want to glorify Krishna?
How wonderful is Krishna? Can you hear me okay?
There's some Akashvani going on.
Yeah, St. Paul says, for me, all things are legal, but not everything is expedient. So Andrea's point about how we're trying to give people faith, but if in sense of saying something that's not exactly true, and then it becomes revealed, and then become to doubt the integrity of the devotees, it's really not expedient. We want to please Krishna, and to please Krishna, if he says kill, we'll kill. We're not moralists about lying or cheating or stealing or killing, but the criteria is, what does Krishna want me to do in this circumstance? But we have to be careful. Sometimes devotees begin to tell slightly deceptive presentation, and then they get in the habit of becoming like a sociopath. They just become like liars, just saying whatever is expedient at that moment, but not really consulting with Krishna. The deities are about to open here, so there's no more time. Oh, yeah? Okay. Maybe have a minute or two, even though the deities are opening late here. Usually we try to stop at 8 o'clock. If the discussion starts at 7:45, we get a few more people able to share. We're about 8 minutes late starting the discussion today. Anybody else have some comments?
I'm sorry for.
There's a comment in the chat where somebody's asking for feedback in the chat.
Oh, okay. Keshav Madhav Prabhu has said, if we have some time, you can please provide some examples of how to recognize and align with Krishna's desire, though it might be materially painful to aspiring devotees. Yeah, it can be materially painful. Yeah, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the spiritual happiness is sometimes like poison in the beginning, but like nectar in the end. Whereas the pleasures of this world are the opposite. They're like nectar in the beginning and poison in the end. So how to recognize and align? First thing is associating with sincere devotees who are tasting those happiness, tasting that happiness already, and they can give us an indication. I want to give space for Bhima Prabhu, please.
Haribol, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Can you hear me? I have found, being someone who spent many years on the road raising funds, I was the worst of them. But anyways, I did real well by Krishna's grace. But I tell you one thing that always works is to just connect with others. If you love, two things we work for, it's very simple, to be more loving and to be joyful. And if you love and you're happy, then even a horse gets it. They can even be rebellious. But if you love them, no matter what, look at Prabhupada loving those devotees in the 60s. Half the time they were high when they were in his classes, and he loved them. He put up with so much. Adi, you have something to say? Is that you, Adi? Okay. Anyways, Hare Krishna, that's all I had to say. Hey, listen, Dina Bandhu, who's your Maharaj?
His name is Janananda Goswami. Janananda Goswami. He's disciple of Srila Prabhupada from England originally.
Okay, so I'm going to have to look into that, because if you are the seed, if you are the flower of Janananda Swami's tree, then I got to go see where are you getting this from? All right, brother.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Thank you so
job.
much.
Beautiful. I wish I could speak like you. I pray to Mother Saraswati that I could speak soberly like you. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. Hare. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ananda Vihari Prabhu, Andrea, everyone for joining.
Thank you, Dina Bandhu Prabhu. Everybody loves you. Thank you so much for being who you are, for giving us your association, for glorifying Krishna with us. You're beautiful.
Thank you. I love all of you here. It's the wealth of my life to be connected with all the devotees. Okay. Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Rantaraj, King of Books, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Dina Bandhu Prabhu Ki Jai. Thanks everyone for tuning in, for participating in this discussion. Hare Krishna. Have a blessed day.